Today I want to talk about agility and internal auditing, or maybe the Agile methodology as adapted for internal auditing. As we know, the Agile methodology was something that is used for systems development by programmers and application developers, and it has some value. It allows the people on the project, developing the project, to stop every so often and see where they are, and also to check in with their customers and make sure that they are delivering precisely what the customers need, what the customers are wanting. And it can be very effective. I had a situation where this methodology was being used for a major development in the Washington office, the Washington State office up in Vancouver of Tosco Corporation. And I could see how the scope was fairly loosely defined at the beginning. And as they went through and they brought the users, the customers along, they refined it to make sure that it was continuing to meet what they needed. And the idea is that this idea of stopping so often and working with the customer to make sure that the deliverable is going to be what they need has been adopted by some as a methodology for internal auditing. It is not something which I totally embrace, and let me see if I can explain to you why. There's a difference between Agile as a methodology and agility. We need agility. We need agility in internal auditing because things are changing all the time. We live in what some people call a VUCA, volatile, dynamic environment where things are changing and we need to be able to move with the times. Now, I've had a couple of situations that I want to share with you that explain this a little bit better. The first one shows the extremes, the absolute extremes. My company, I was the head of internal audit and also running risk management at Business Objects, which was a combination of French and American companies and culture. It was a software company, very dynamic, highly entrepreneurial, very successful company. And they announced, the leadership of the company announced that it was going to be acquired by the German company SAP, which was a far different culture, far different environment, far different leadership and management style. So they also, the SAP leadership, the CFO and CIO announced that Business Objects had to convert over to the SAP system, previously been running on Oracle systems, within 6 months. So we had an environment where the culture was very different, the systems were going to be changed over, the management of the company was somewhat uncertain and in flux when it came to the leadership of the Business Objects part of the company, which was announced as being basically independent or autonomous part. It could be a future division of SAP. And the business was a little bit different as well. SAP had a good number of very large deals, sales, and Business Objects had a large number of smaller sales. So the revenue cycle was quite different. Anyway, I looked at this as head of internal audit and risk management, and I said, the environment has totally changed, of course, and the biggest risk was that something was going to break, whether it be the loss of key employees, failure to put in the systems properly, failure, and as it turned out this would be true, to process revenue transactions appropriately. And so I took everybody in my team off their traditional audits that were in the audit plan and moved them to working with management to help management understand and assess and respond to the risks to the successful integration of business objects into SAP. My counterpart on the SAP side had a totally different response. Totally different. He said, when I asked him to give me some people to work on this, he said he could not because he had an annual plan and he wasn't going to be able to change it without the approval of the CEO. Okay, so something wrong with the independence there, but never mind. He was unwilling to change it and stop any of the audits he was working on. So I was totally agile and he was totally rigid. Which do you think? I think is better for the organization. The ability to be agile. Now, the other story that I wanted to share was at Tosco Corporation in our Phoenix operation. We ran there the Circle K operation, which is convenience, about 6,000 convenience stores and gas stations, and there were other retail kind of operations in there. My financial operational auditing team did an audit of accounts payable and found a series of quite significant control issues where the risk was that people involved in accounts payable might have been able to manipulate the system to steal money, to commit fraud. This investigation into whether in fact they had taken advantage of that was not in my audit plan, but I consider this to be a serious priority. And I asked one of my people, an IT audit manager, Bruce Taylor, for help. Bruce came off the plans that he had for auditing IT audits and spent a 2-3 weeks developing analytic programs in ACL, happened to be in ACL, that went in and looked at the possibility that individuals had both set up an accounts vendor and then approved payments and other things like that. Also looked at suspicious looking transactions and spent a couple of weeks doing this, wrote quite a large number of programs and actually helped pull them all together to identify where the more significant risk was, and therefore and handed that over to my operational financial auditing team under Rick Claus. And they went and investigated samples in each of those areas where Bruce's programs had identified things that needed to be checked into. Now, fortunately, nobody had taken advantage of this, and there was no fraud. And the IT and accounts payable management were able to remediate all the control issues fairly quickly. But here was a situation where the risks had changed, the value of audits had changed, and we needed to be able to move quickly to address them. Now, I happen to be a big fan of cruising. I've done a lot of cruising now that I've retired, especially now that I've retired. And when I look at a big ship, like a cruise ship, that's not really particularly agile. Bringing it to a stop takes a while. Shifting direction takes a while compared to other vehicles. So for example, if you want to go to Antarctica and you want to get in close and you want to maybe get on land and see the animals there, a cruise ship is not the best way to do it. In fact, it can be dangerous because it can't move as easily. It can't respond to changes in the current or anything else. So you go on a smaller ship. And that's pretty much my approach to internal auditing, is that if I want to be agile, I want to have small audits. I want to have small audits that focus on the more significant issues in each area of audit. And I tell my people as we're developing the audit plan, I don't want anything more than 200 audits, 200 hours, I should say. nothing more than 200 hours. Now, that doesn't mean I can't have anything more, but it has to be a reason for it exceeding 200. This makes my team focus in on what's important. But the result is my audit plan has a lot of small audits. It's also flexible in the sense that it's fairly strong and rigid for the next month or two. But then after that, and I explain this to the audit committee, it's very flexible because I don't really know whether the risks are going to continue to be as I think they are now or whether I need to change them. So I'm flexible. I'm agile. So when things turn up, I can take a lower priority audit off the schedule and I can add an audit that is in the schedule. So my audit planning is flexible, it's responsive, I update it at the speed of risk in the business, and it focuses on only those things that are important to the success of the business and its achievement of enterprise risks and enterprise objectives. So the audit plan is flexible and agile. My approach on each individual audit is also agile and flexible, so that as we are going through the audit, which remember is less than 200 hours, if we see something that is no longer clearly important, we can stop. On the other hand, if we see an issue which wasn't in the original scope, but is now recognized as important, we can extend, we can go. Years ago, this was called stop and go auditing. You stop when there's no longer a value in doing the audit, and you go when you need to extend, maybe add to the scope because you've identified a risk. And this is agility. Now, a lot of people like my friend Clarissa Lucas, who's written a book on the difference between agility and the Agile methodology, don't really understand that you need to, not everybody understands that to be agile, you need to have small audits. If you have a big cruise ship, it's inherently not agile. You can modify it a little bit by putting in engines that will move the ship from side to side, which is fantastic. If you've ever been on a cruise ship, they can actually move sideways. But that's really not agile. Make your audits small. Make them focus on only those issues that matter so that you can keep them small. And that enables you to have small pieces in your audit plan that can be moved around much more easily, and you can be agile. You can add projects, you can change the scope of projects, you can take projects away. And that way you can be responsive, and this is the way in which you make sure that you are able to meet the needs today of your customer, the needs today of the organization, rather than following some kind of rigid program which makes it difficult to shift direction. So I hope that is useful for you. Let me know, email, comments, if you want to discuss this further. And of course, I've also just recently talked about other aspects of this, like key controls, focusing on only those controls that are really necessary to achieve the objectives. Again, which is an inherent part of being agile. Doing more work than is really necessary stops you from being agile. So be agile, focus on what matters, and deliver the value, assurance, insight, and advice that your customers need when they need it.